filmmaker that's now actually working on a feature film with some people with disabilities, also out of our adaptations program here at the JCC. And I'd like to welcome them both to join up here. Thank you both so much for being here. Just to get things started, and we'd love to open this conversation. I actually have a few questions for you guys, but I want to say, just reflecting on the film, something amazing about this film is this. I mentioned earlier on, this is in a way a sequel. I think it stands alone. I hope you're able to follow apart from the Swedish. But a film was made. It became a huge film. The first version, the first film, The Importance of Tying Your Own Shoes, became a major hit in Sweden and throughout Europe. And they realized that this group here, these people, are marketable. And suddenly, the government and the funds in Sweden invested in making a sequel, which is something that unfortunately we do not see that there's enough of a market here in the United States of inclusion. People say, they want, we don't see these kind of faces on our screens. I want to hear your thoughts and reflections.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about it that way, and there's something that's sticking with me from the film, which was the line that if you see us, we exist. And I guess to your question, it really, I don't know why it happens here. I don't know why that is. I don't know why we can't see in the same way as Sweden does, or just in general. And I guess I'm sitting with that question. So I guess this is answering your question, but I'm also sort of just sitting with this fact of, is that true? Do we not exist unless we're seen? And what does it mean actually to be seen in that way? And who says that you're seen and not seen? The movie makers, the people who have the money?
I think that's exactly it. I think the film is telling us the answer to the question.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And I'm kind of looking forward to a time when we might have films about featuring people with disabilities that are not about the disability, but are just about relationships, just about people.
Great. Yes, those are our favorite kind of films here, and we're starting to see more and more of those because it is our community, it is our reality, and it should be a little bit more of a real depiction of our world and not an exclusive depiction. Both of you work as far as acting and arts with people with disabilities, and is that at all in any way a different experience? How is the experience at all different, if at all?
Well, for me, it's a difference of mostly whether we're working with a trained actor versus a non-actor in the process of directing. That's kind of the main difference that I've had.
Well, for me, I'm actually a registered drama therapist and a licensed creative arts therapist, and so the work that we do at Candy and the work that we do here is about using theater not necessarily for a product, but using it as a process to explore inner life. And so when you're exploring inner life, it doesn't matter who you're exploring inner life with. It's the same process. We all come with different, I think the other message of the story is that we all come with different struggles, no matter what we do in real life. And I think the experience that I've had as a therapist is whether I'm working here at Adaptations or whether I'm working with children and youth who've been traumatized, and it's about the process. Everybody's process is different, but it's definitely the process of exploration, and that's the exciting part of the work and the exciting part about this film.
That's, I think, something that working with people from the community here has opened my eyes to in all of my relationships is that I come to my interactions without the assumption that that your brain works exactly like mine does, and that we're all processing things in the same way. So it's really been a privilege for me to working with non-actors, something I always enjoyed about that as a director is that I learned so much because we're really collaborating together in figuring out scenes. And when you work with a trained actor, they're very confident in their craft and they want to go and take your direction and go off in the corner and they do their process with it. Working with non-actors, they want that help. It also requires a lot of trust in the relationship with the director. And so I've had this privilege of working with actors with disabilities, or first-time actors with disabilities. Going through that process has changed.
I will add that I think working with actors is sometimes harder to understand than working with non-actors with or without disabilities, and can definitely be a very complicated process, to put it lightly. Just before we open it to any of your questions and comments, the actual one of the other things that's nice about this film is what it does is it then allows people with disabilities who see this film to say, oh, wait a minute, I can be in this picture too. Which up until now, we heard one of our speakers this week mentioning that, growing up, he had no aspiration to be on television because he didn't see anybody like him on television and thought that would be impossible. And this kind of opens that door a little bit further, and the inclusion of the arts can then grow on a whole nother level.
I agree.
That's why you're here.
Perfect statement.
Just making statements. I'd love to take any questions, comments, or other thoughts that you'd like to share about the film. Did you enjoy the film as a standalone film? I think going through them in my head, it's definitely the biggest budget film of our festival this year, and that adds something, because our eyes, actually, I think as spectators, the mainstream, which is our audience that we here for, I think is used to seeing a little bit more of we have plenty of beautiful, artistic, and high-level independent films here and at the festival. But really, this level of production is something that you unfortunately rarely see in a festival like this one, and I think in some ways it makes it more accessible. You had a comment, Thomas? Yeah.
Well, I think I was struck by the same line that you were. I'm sorry, the same line that you were, unless we're seeing we don't exist. And I guess my question to y'all is in terms of the disabilities that you work with. To what extent are you working with physical versus mental disabilities?
So at Canny, I'm working with both. Creative Alternatives of New York works with many different populations. Here at the JCC, we work with the adaptations, and so the group that we're working on are mostly on the autistic spectrum, although there are other things in there. And it's interesting, about, gosh, I think it's 5 years ago now. Was that the first year of the ReelAbilities Festival?
This is our 6th year.
6, okay. So it was 6 years ago, or 5 years ago, I don't know if it was the first or second year. The group, thank you, awesome.
Anita keeps track of things.
I like it. The second year, the group here, the drama therapy group here, did create a play. And I think part of the reason that stuck out with me so much is that the play they created was called To Be Seen. And it was based on their own experience, and it was based on the improvs that we were doing in the class, in the group, and my poor intern was scribing everything. But what was really interesting about it was probably about a week before we were about to do the first performance of it, they all said, we don't want to do it anymore. And I think we came up against this question about what it means to be seen. Because they had named it, they had wrote it, it was all about what it means to be seen with a disability, but when you come face to face with that, just like in a movie, what are they going to think of me? Am I going to get bullied more? Am I going to get... And so for me, that was the most important part of the entire process. Whether we did the production or not, that moment, that processing, that was when they were seen, to me. And then they were seen here, I think they did 5 or 6 performances over the city, and when it was done, some of them said, that was the greatest experience ever, I want to do it again. And some of them said, I never want to do that again in my life, but that was great, glad we did it. Right? So yeah, it's an amazing thing to think about, what does it mean to actually be seen?
Rachel, can you share just a little bit about the project that you made and the one that you're working on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend of about 11 years who is the first friend I had with a disability. He's on the spectrum. And for all the time I knew him, he was looking for a girlfriend and kind of going around about it in some of the most ineffective ways possible. Online dating and going and trying to meet women at clubs. And then it's now about 5 years ago that he met his first girlfriend here at Adaptations. And then the real drama began in his life because he suddenly had all of the expectations and the dreams for what that would be met reality, and I was observing a relationship that I thought was pretty classically romantic and something that I thought would be unique, should be experienced from his perspective. And I'm a filmmaker. I was at the time at grad school at Columbia for film, and I had a thesis due. So we made a short film together, Brandon and I, and spent about a year working on acting exercises, and he would work with trained actresses. And then we cast a young woman here from Adaptations as his love interest, and I started getting to know other people from the community and made this short film. We won Best Short Film at Columbia University Film Festival, which was pretty nice.
It's called Keep the Change.
The film's called Keep the Change. And since then we've been continuing working on a feature, and I've been developing other characters from the same community. The process is different than I've been used to in making films, where you go and you sit in a room by yourself and work on the script and you hone it and polish it, and only then do you take it out to the world and start finding actors who you'll kind of plug into the characters. Very different. This process is like a experiment, a science lab. So I have my idea of who I think Brandon is and what motivates him. I write a story about that, and then I test it out with him, and we see how much of it is actually true, and keep kind of going back and forth to write a story that will tap into these characters and what motivates them. So it's a great fun collaboration, and that's what we're working on now for the future.
Well, we look forward to hopefully seeing it here on the screen someday. Thank you both so much for being with us here today. This was really enlightening.